So what tools do I need to start a podcast? Very good question, because there's nothing more frustrating than buying something and then realizing you needed this, and this to go with it and totally blowing your costs out the door. No surprises. That's one of my big elements. No surprises. We'll go over that in just a little bit. By the end of this video, you'll know the necessary tools you need to get your podcast started, some of the tools that would be good to have, and the 2 tools you need more than any of the others that most people overlook, and the 2 that will be responsible to guarantee your success. I'm Nick Natarella with AdWise Creative. Getting your podcast up and running, it boils down to some really basic components. First of all, of course, the one that you think of the most immediately is a microphone. Microphones come in all kinds of shapes and sizes, and there are simple ones, there are complicated ones, there are very expensive ones that may be way out of the league for a podcast, and then there are some others that you probably should avoid simply because they just don't sound good for a podcast. But some of the things that we always overlook, especially when it comes to microphones, is microphone stand. Always, you need a microphone stand. There are several different ways to deal with this. If this is going to be a temporary setup, maybe you could do like the little tripods that you see that also double as maybe camera holders or something like that, smartphone holders. Little something like that just to put on your desktop. Maybe you'd like to use more of a boom style mic like they use for guitar players. Something like that so it'll be out of the way and you can still talk. Then again, maybe there's just a straight stand. Something really simple that just sits in front of you. And then again, there is another kind that if this can be a permanent setup, where you plug everything in and this is going to be the designated desk to record podcasts, like they have at radio stations, there are microphone stands that are actually bolted to the desktop. They're out of the way, they're strategically positioned. You can always pull them down to talk or pop them up so you can work on the computer and the music and the commercials that are coming up. But for the most part, everything stays where it is. Nothing is unplugged or put away. And if you can get away with that setup, that's going to save you so much wear and tear, and especially a lot of hassle, both setting up and tearing down. And then before you can hit record, are we talking 5 minutes of troubleshooting, or are we talking an hour and a half of troubleshooting and you just wasted your afternoon and didn't get anything recorded? All that to say, there is a microphone stand that you can bolt to your desktop. You know what kind I like? Let's get it one and done, okay? There are basically 2 kinds of microphones. One is a condenser microphone and one is a dynamic microphone. A dynamic microphone is pretty much what you would expect. There's a little tiny diaphragm that is bouncing back and forth because of the words you're speaking, the vibration in the air, and it's moving back and forth, and that diaphragm is then changing the electromagnetic signal inside a magnet. It's bouncing back and forth and it's making the magnet move, and that turns it into an electronic signal. Then there is a condenser microphone that does pretty much all of that, but it takes power, electricity, to run it. And it's a 48-volt charge is what it needs. We typically call that in the audio world phantom power. One takes power, one doesn't need power. Now, they've come up with this little device for the dynamic mics. I want to make sure I got my head screwed on here. For the dynamic mics, it's like a little preamplifier that comes before the amplifier. If that makes sense, a preamp for the preamp, is that right? It's a little tiny box, and all you do is you take one cord, run it from the mic to the inside, then comes out and goes into your next piece of equipment, the interface. But notice, now you just went from 1 cable to 2. So you're going to need 2 cables for, it's called a mic activator. There's a brand name, but I don't want to throw that out there. But anyway, it's a mic activator. Notice that with the mic activator, A, there's that price, and B, you now need 2 cables instead of just 1. So whether you choose the dynamic mic range with the mic actuator in the middle or the condenser mic, either way, you're probably going to end up in this little tiny, best way to describe it is a mixing board. Okay, they are little tiny mixing boards, and I know you've seen mixing boards that have those channels, and then you got all the knobs that end in a little slider. Imagine that in a little tiny box that's just big enough for 1, maybe 2, maybe 4 microphones to plug into, and they've got some little knobs on them. And that's it. So all your microphones come into that interface, and the interface then goes to your computer and will probably plug into your USB jack in one of your USB jacks in the computer. Very simple setup. But each step along the way, you could have 2 cables per mic or 1 cable per mic. You have the interface. Then you have a cable that goes to your computer. You're already up to 3 to 5 cables and 2 microphones, an interface, and stands. Nobody thinks about this while they're trying to plan things out. So always, always, always be aware of everything that kind of goes with it. And that's what I'm hoping to cover here for you today. So all these little things can add up. If there's any one of those things that we've already talked about that you need a deep dive on, let me know in the comments and I'll get you another video. Are there any questions? Do you have something you want to go over? Let me know in the comments and I'll be sure to get back to you. Another something that you're going to have to get when it comes to your podcast is a hosting service. Think of it like an audio website, okay? You've stored your website over here, whether it be Bluehost or HostGator or any of those other hosts that you pay to every year. And then on my computer, I have a browser that's going to call up your website. 2 different things. Your website's always, always, always at the host, but now I can see it on my computer. The same thing happens with your podcasts. Your audio is hosted someplace else, but I'm going to go to Spotify, or I'm going to go to Apple Podcasts in order to play it. It's hosted here, but it's played here. That interaction is going to take place by whichever host you decide to sign up with. You will ultimately be responsible for making that and bridging that connection between the host and the aggregator, the host and the playback place. That's going to be your responsibility because at the other end, you're also going to want your graphics uploaded. You're going to want your description included. You're going to want your podcast logo and all that kind of stuff. That's all going to make sure that it all matches up. So there's a little bit of setup on both ends, but once you make the connection, it'll happen every single time for you. Do it once, not for every episode. Just do it once and you're set up and ready to go. My point is, with that podcast host, there will be a little bit of an expense and a little bit of a time commitment as well. Whether you have an assistant do it, a VA, or maybe you're going to be doing it, just account for that while you're putting this together. And then along with all of these episodes, there's going to be some graphics involved. I mentioned your logo already. Each episode, you may want to have a graphic as well. Something similar to your logo, so it's always within the family, but you might want to have change the title. If you have a guest, have the guest picture on there, that kind of thing. So every time you might be making a few adjustments. Have 2 or 3 templates already done. Where? In Canva. Canva can be a free service, or if you want to pay for a subscription and get a lot more options, bells and whistles, you can do that too. I've made over 200 graphics by myself. I'm not a graphic artist. I change text and I add a picture. That's as far as I go. Maybe adjust some spacing just because I've typed more than the example had. But other than that, I'm not a graphic artist. The free version for Canva has done me just fine. And something optional that you may want to consider is when you're doing all these promotions and you've got little snippets that you want to send out to the world to say, hey, look, I've got a new podcast episode. All these little things that you can produce and generate, it wouldn't hurt to have some social media apps that distribute that for you. So you get it down to 1 click and it goes to 6, 8, maybe even 10 different social media channels all at the same time. You don't have to worry about it. That's a really, really nice time saver. Again, some of these things come with a free subscription. I'm thinking of Hootsuite. That's the one I used to use years ago. Hootsuite came with a free subscription that had limited capabilities. If you've got a whole bunch of stuff you need to connect to, you might want to sign up for the paid version. Now, I told you the 2 most important tools to make sure that your podcast is a success without even thinking twice about it. Ready? And the irony is you need to write this down. Pen and paper. The most important tools that you can use are pen and paper to plan your podcast from the beginning. If you don't have that foundation underneath you of what you're going to be talking about, who you're talking to, how you're going to convey the information, and in fact, what information to convey in the first place, all the equipment in the world is useless if you don't know what you're going to be talking about. And I've said this several different times that the biggest danger is turning your podcast into a 15 or 30 or 45-minute advertisement for your own company. That's not what it's about. It's about giving information to your possible clients and customers that they will do repeat business with you. The purpose of the company podcast, the focus and purpose is your listener, your potential client or customer. This is probably one of the greatest lead generators that you can have in your arsenal. Here's a quick exercise to see if you're on the right track. You ready? Take 5 minutes, and what are 20 things that you could talk about in your podcast that your listeners would be most interested in hearing about? And I mean that. 20 episodes in 5 minutes. Now, these don't have to be titles or anything like that, just memory joggers. Okay? Memory joggers. Little things that you could talk about, details that you could talk about for 8 to 10 minutes, maybe 12 minutes at a time. And what would they be? Write them down in 5 minutes. If you can't come up with those 20 in just 5 minutes, there's a chance that you might not be able to sustain this. Now, there's also a technique where you can take a big topic and then drill down. Maybe you've got 5, 10, 15, 20 subtopics just out of one major topic. That'll save you. Don't worry about that. You're good to go there. But seriously, being able to rattle off 20 topics right off the bat is a really great place to start. And what are we talking about topic-wise? Start with the questions that current clients are already asking. What do they want to know? Let's say you're a financial advisor. They're asking you questions about 401ks, IRAs, investments, penalties. What if I withdraw too soon? Am I old enough to retire? Blah, 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 blah. All this kind of stuff. What are the questions that they're constantly asking you? Those are the ones that new folks are going to ask you as well. Chances are, across the board of all your clients, 80% of their questions have all been the same. Each one might have a different 20%, but there's a foundation of questions there that they're already asking, that if you start answering them now, that's what your next client is going to be asking, and that's how you're going to be drawing them in. So sitting down and pressing that little red button and starting to record, being able to talk to your audience in such a way that gets them engaged and gets them, you want them to feel comfortable. You want them to feel like you're just sitting there having a cup of coffee and going over stuff, right? I've got a free PDF for you called Engaging Your Audience, the 3 secrets to skyrocket your podcast success. Quick little read, but boy, oh boy, is it a game changer. The mindset shift, very simple, but it will take you a little while to implement it. So get your free copy right now. Click down below in the description. Look for Engaging Your Audience and get your free copy right now. I'm Nick Natarella. Thank you for watching.